All right, good afternoon. 4:04 p.m. I'd like to call a special meeting of the Stevensville School Board of Trustees to order. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start with our roll call. Nathan. Billy. Stephanie.
Here.
I'm here. Ben. Tony. And it's a little quiet there, but Tony's there on the phone there. Harrison reported here. Fran.
Here.
Jennifer.
Here.
Dan. All right, we've got 6 trustees present, constituting a quorum for tonight's meeting. At this time, would ask if we have recognition of visitors or special guests by the board or the administration.
We have special guests, but they're here to present for curriculum and
Great.
Yeah.
All right. And then at this special meeting, is there any board comment? Yes.
I just have a couple of things. I just want to make sure that everyone in the public is aware that I have a final engagement, and I've let the board chair know, as well as our superintendent know, that I have to step out about 5:15 because my son is playing the jazz. And I would invite everyone to come over to the jazz concert when you're finished here. We have hot snacks.
Very good, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Any other comment? And is there public comment for this afternoon? All right, we'll jump right in then. We do have a number of items on our consent agenda related to employment. Everything's there in front of everybody. Items on the consent agenda have been organized as such due to their similar nature and deemed unlikely by the superintendent board chair to require individual discussion. Any trustee has the right to request that an item be removed from the consent agenda and be acted upon by itself. Should any trustee wish to remove an item from the Seeing none, trustee approval of the consent agenda pertains only to those items that trustees legally have the right to approve under Montana Code annotated. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda as presented? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That takes us to our business and action items, and the reason that we're here tonight to learn about the high school ELA and curriculum resource adoption presentation.
All right. Welcome. I'm John Horn, curriculum director and elementary assistant principal, and with some amazing team members who will introduce themselves here in a little bit. We have a presentation for you to showcase a little bit about our high school ELA curriculum adoption. It's going to be anywhere from 10 to 90 minutes. And so last time I said 10 minutes, and then like 90 minutes. We're going to shoot for 10 first, and then if you have good questions, we might go on that, which is okay. All right, so no further ado, we're going to be talking a little bit about the selection process again. A little bit different selection process for the high school as it was for elementary. We'll kind of get into that a little bit, what the differences were. We'll talk about what our recommendation is, and then we'll talk about the components of that recommendation, and then our plan for implementation and how much it's going to be. So with no further ado, I will hand it over to Karen.
All right, so our process started very similar to the elementary because we all did it together, learned about the science of reading. And then with side-by-side consulting coming in and giving us information on like how to review a curriculum and what to look for, they then led us to ed reports, which to start with, I will say, like, it took us a lot longer to find something to look at for high school because there's not as much out there. And so we met with side-by-side consulting an additional time without elementary just to be able to try to find something that we wanted to look at and to go forward with, which is then what when we got to ed reports. And they, told us how to score different curriculum. They scored different curriculum, so then we could look at their scores and decide what we wanted to look at. We chose some and we met with curriculum representatives. We reviewed those materials. We met with the department, the English department in the high school, and discussed what we were looking at. So we're really looking for a curriculum for high school that's going to get our students reading more, because we really lack in that area. They just don't like to read, most of them. And one that ties the reading to the writing, because that's also very important, which was talked about in the previous presentation with elementary. So we want to just continue that in the high school, with all the reading and writing going together. So we found some curriculum that does this. It exposes them to more novels, which we feel like is really good. And there's just so much you can learn through novel studies. And we really like to teach through novels. So we cover a lot of our curriculum in the high school in novel teaching, because with our standards, they can really be taught in novel studies with those standards. So we found a curriculum that really does this, which is ARC. And it is the American Reading Company, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. ARC was really designed kind of with backward mapping, where they took what students need to know that first year of college in their writing class. What do they need to know there? And went down all the way to kindergarten to really pace out, what they should learn at each grade level, which then really gives us a curriculum experience supercharged to teaching natural successful leaders, or supercharged to nurture successful leaders. And this is really going to help our students, no matter what they're doing after high school, whether they're going into college or they're going to trade school or they're going to the military or just to the workforce, just being able to get them into a curriculum that is going to help them further when they go outside of high school. That's what we want, and we really feel like the way that this is designed can help them in all of those aspects. So here are some reasons also why we like this curriculum for the high school. The text, it engages students. They are appropriately rigorous and rich, and are accompanied by cohesive writing and speaking questions and tasks built into each daily lesson. They are providing materials that students can practice and they can produce different things with the skills that they learn from them. And it gives them opportunities for like taking what they're learning and really synthesizing it together with outcomes. And some critical thinking, which is really important too, especially when you leave high school, and you need to be able to do that. It also gives us as educators support. So they will very much support us in implementing it, planning, differentiating instruction, and just like moving on forward throughout teaching.
I'm Aisha Haxton. I'm English language arts teacher and the coordinator at ALC. ARC is built on using 3 to 4 thematic units per year. But because ARC's units of study are based upon a 120-minute class period, which we don't have, our team has selected to only purchase 2 units per grade level. So in grades 9 and 11, the focus will be on informational research labs. So the core text will be an informational text. And the final writing assignment is based on a study of social science or social studies topic. Then in grades 10 and 12, the theme is based on and is an argument research project. Again, focused on social studies or science topic also non-fictional piece in the core literature. Then each grade level, 9 through 12, will also, their second unit will be a literature genre lab, where they're deep diving into core text, learning those literary elements for a specific genre, and constructing narratives. So, like Erin mentioned, each one of these units, at the end of the unit, they'll be producing a large writing piece with smaller pieces building up to that final writing piece at the end of each unit. So with those 2 units per grade level, what do we do with the rest of the time? It leaves us with a few weeks to spare for things like IDFA, which we're required to teach. It lets us engage a little bit more in those Shakespeare pieces, lets us focus a little bit more on grammar, especially while we're trying to get kids caught back up to where they need to be at grade level. It lets us do ACT prep and a large vocabulary focus, lets us utilize our IXL platform, and then also have time for those common assessments, like when we take that week and everybody's doing their ACT testing. It gives us time to do that. So that's why the 2, just focusing on 2 units per grade level. These are the theme focuses that we've selected for each grade. In the 9th grade, they'll do, in the genre, they'll do a fantasy novel which focuses on themes of society and government. In their informational research lab, it's focused on sports and society and how sports affects society as a whole. In grade 10, they're both historical fiction and world history units in the literary genre, and then the argument research lab is focused on the theme of Africa. Grade 11 is modern American historical fiction and American history, as well as the civil rights era in that informational genre or informational research lab category. Grade 12 is dystopian literature and contemporary issues in the genre lab. And then for that argument research lab, it's focused on contemporary issues. These are grade specific. We could have put any of these in any grade, but when we let ARC know what grade it we taught in, it levels out the informational texts and the texts that students come in contact with. So 9th graders might be talking about some society issues, but they're not going to be as in-depth as what a 12th grader is going to be talking about and discussing. So they're grade and age appropriate. Let's see if there's any other. One of the things that ARC will do for us is they're working with us to specifically select texts that we are comfortable teaching, that we're comfortable with teaching in our community. For example, dystopian literature unit, the core text that they provide, Erin and I and the rest of the group really felt strongly that it was probably not an appropriate text to engage even our 12th grade readers in. So they will not send us that core text, but we'll be able to purchase another text to go with that unit. That's one of the great things about these units, is that in years to come, we have the flexibility to engage with any core text that meets kind of the theme of the topic in order to be more relevant or appropriate for our students' needs. Many of the units that we've selected for specific grade levels also walk along very nicely with what students are learning in their social studies and science classes here, like the world history and American history units. So what do we get? Resources. with each unit, we get a teacher's guide, we get a scripted lesson guide, we get a final student project organizers and rubrics, we get reusable research and vocabulary cards, classroom copies of the core text, which is read together as a class. We also get reusable writing resource cards, anchor titles, books, and more books. When we first looked at everything that comes with each unit, we thought, okay, this is really going to be expensive. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, when we certainly were. But the awesome part about this is how easy it is for us to, as teachers, to accommodate individual student needs. We always talk about that, how that's the dream, to be able to meet kids where they're at, but how that's often very, very difficult to do. But if, for example, if we have students that are leveled either higher or lower than what that core text that we bring together as a class, there are dozens and dozens of other titles provided that students can read their choice read that still allow them to participate fully in the unit lessons and all of the assignments and those final projects. There are titles provided for students to use as resources for that final writing piece. So for example, if the core text is a non-fictional book, then there'll be fictional books that they can read for their free read available so that they balance those in a unit. If the core text is a fictional text in those genre units, then a lot of the reading pieces that are available outside of that will be non-fictional that go along with the theme so that they can do that deep dive and research for their final project paper. Each unit uses both non-fictional and fictional. So students are getting tons of exposure to relevant texts that are building their background knowledge and their base knowledge. When we saw everything that was provided for each unit, we were really excited just about all the resources that we would have available to us. Okay.
Okay, so since John said between 10 and 90, I felt like that was directed to me. There is no over and under. I'm not trying to make it to a certain point. So they only gave you one slide. This one, to me, is super important. It's about the training that you get with it. Seen a lot of curriculums come through, and I'll just throw some data at you. We're big John Hattie fans around here. We like, what do you do and what impact does it get? A good curriculum will give you a score of 0.4. Teacher efficacy or training will give you a score of 1 point for it. So if you combine those two, you immediately impact how effective this is going to be. If you just do the curriculum by itself, you won't get nearly the impact as if you train people on the curriculum. So really fighting to make sure we are able to do the training and get the professional development that goes with it. So time frame, this works out. Thank you guys for holding special board meetings to let us get this process faster. This is important for teachers to be able to have it in their hands prior to. I've been to a lot of meetings where the first meeting at professional development, the teachers are literally picking up their stuff at that time. And then the presenter says, do you have any questions? We haven't even looked at it yet, right? So this gives them at least time for that first training to be able to say, yeah, I've looked for this, this, and this. Here's some questions that we might have. So that May, getting acquainted with materials is huge. And then June and July, being able to really access some of that summertime to do some targeted training, and then refresh again in August prior to doing that. I know I went fast through that, but I can't stress just how important being able to train on it is going to give us the start we want and really be able to.
First with the money piece, I'll just reiterate some of the important pieces that are connected between our elementary curriculum and our high school curriculum that you might have heard today. Some things that really stood out to us. One was the fact that it is based on the science of reading, and so we have a strong program that's based on comics, but a lot of the material and resources that are built into the high school build off of that continuum. Amplify is not how high school programs, that's why we couldn't choose Amplify for our high school program. And then on the other end of this, we didn't go with ARC for the elementary because looking at the ed reports, as well as diving into it ourselves and talking to literacy, this program ranked low for the elementary, but it ranked high for the high school, right? So when I talked earlier at a board meeting about there isn't very many curriculums out there that are effective K through 12, but if there isn't one out there, you're going to find most school districts do one or two different things, right? They sometimes have a different program at each level of school, elementary, middle, and high, or they, at the high school level, they a lot of times don't add in any curriculum and they just do novel based, and that's it. And so we felt like it was important to have a structure and a format with those novels that builds from grade to grade to grade. And I think you guys did an amazing job of finding that. And I don't know how many times we've spent on Zoom calls with the art company, continually asking questions. And we did a great job, I felt like, of really diving into the books that we were going to choose to put in front of our kids. And I felt like that's important, that we make decisions, and they were good with it too, of making decisions that were based on our community as well and what we might be able to teach. Yeah, because there is going to be books, you know, there's books taught out there that in Montana you have to let parents know we're talking about anything that deals with sexual reproduction or sex. And when you start looking at any PG-13 movie, you see that. Well, same with books, right? There's been a lot of that stuff in books, and so we felt like making sure to vet the books that we do have, that we're getting with this curriculum, really support, I think, the direction that we want to head as a district. So I want to put some extra kudos back to this team for putting time into that. So thanks so much for being able to put that time into it and put those resources in front of our kids. Another component that I really liked was, if you heard in Amplify, they have a big stressor on social studies and science. Same thing with this. You saw there's a lot of connections to social studies and science, which I think is going to lead to hopefully a lot of collaboration between our areas within our high school on our different social studies science teams. And then being able to expect some writing, you know, in all subject areas too. And so I feel like if they're having some constructed writing, it's going to help across the board. Leading researchers like Deke was talking about with John Hattie, but John Hattie also talks about the fact of the power of writing. Like a good reading program has to have a good writing program that connects. It can't be taught separately. And so this connects both. So we felt like that's another reason why we should go forward with this piece of it. So big piece on the professional development. We're looking at right after school's out, doing professional development, having all the resources here. So not saying that you can vote how you want to vote tonight, but we're trying to get this stuff in May, so we can have this in front of our teachers before they leave. And we're looking at second or third week of May, hopefully second week of May, of having some optional professional development and giving teachers an option either in June or August, or if they want to do both, they can come to both, and then offering it as one of the PIRs for October. So to really get this out to them and to be able to work with our companies. The companies said they would work with us to get that training over the summer. So with no further ado, the price tag. So it's about $38,000 for the actual curriculum and resources, and then it's another $7,000 for professional development when they come on campus. They have given us, which is different from Amplify, this company has given us, like, we do PLCs on Wednesdays, right, which is about an hour and a half. They're willing to do those PLCs once a month if we want to include it in this cost, right? Amplify was asking us more for that piece of it. So I like the fact that they're going to add that in too. So that $7,000 might sound like a lot for coming twice to our campus here, but they're going to offer those 1 hour, 1.5 hours a month throughout the implementation and going forward. Another piece that I like about this, Tony asked last time about sustainability of the program, right? And so this, I feel like, has a structure or framework built into it. So as we go forward and as we add in new types of books that we want to get in front of our kids, we can put it into the framework easier. This is all hands-on books too. There isn't an online component to this. The online component comes from what we do with Google Classroom and some of the platforms that we use with IXL to be able to help support that. And so again, it's hands-on. I like that piece of it. I can't tell you enough how often I am modeling for my high school age kids at home that the books actually open and maybe be read, right? And so I like that aspect of it. So with no further ado, this is kind of something we talked about the materials that we had. We talked about the fact there's 2 units per grade level. I just mentioned to you about 2 campus visits that they'll be here. We have training once a month, working with our English department on those PLCs. We know this is for at least 5 years, but we can continue on past 5 years as long as we come back through the review curriculum process and decide, are these resources meeting our OPI standards? And if they are, then we're going to keep it. We'll keep going forward with it. We might have to relook at that in 5 years again. Again, there's no online components to it. So, questions for me or for the committee?
That's assessment. How are we going to determine, or are you folks going to determine?
Love the question. So we have IXL, and I don't know if you want to speak to that. I mean, I can, but I love having the fact that you can speak to it too. We have essential standards, and we're building a curriculum guide, right? And then we're going to use IXL too. I can speak to it, but you can too.
Yeah, absolutely. IXL is very much standards-based, right? And so being able to measure the skills and the standards outside of just the reading material, if that makes sense, right? So if you have, you're measuring, are they able to pick up literature? I'm going to use all the wrong words because it's English, all right? But thank you. The skills and the content are not necessarily name a character from this book, name the character from that, or the skills for these grammar and all of that. So we'll be using IXL as our assessment piece to go alongside of that.
So we also have classroom-based assessments that they'll be creating too. They go directly with the books and the stuff that they create. And so you heard me talk about earlier at the last meeting about us collecting some data from our teachers on how well we're doing in our classrooms. And so one of the things we'll be looking at inside this curriculum guide is the ability to collect data to see how our programs are doing all throughout. So whether it's a unit test and they have to turn that data in to us to be able to look at, it's one more piece of data. We feel like using that classroom-based assessment and with IXL, hopefully will give us a good indicator on how we're going to do on our state test, which is going to be ACT right now. And so hopefully those correlate a little bit. They tell us that ACT is pretty indicative of how it meets the Common Core, not necessarily Montana standards. But we want to see that correlation. Like how does it correlate what we're doing here to how they do on the ACT test, right? And I have a feeling in the next 5 years, they almost got rid of the ACT last year. I feel like we're going to continue discussions with the state superintendent on what's a better possible way to assess our high school students. So I think people are asking about it, and I almost got rid of it. They didn't put the timeline going fast enough to find some things put in place, and so they decided to continue with ACT. So again, some of these are moving faults, and we have to be able to moving targets. So we will have to reassess where we're at. That's what the whole curriculum review process does. It kickstarts every 5 years, and OPI pushes out new standards. It kickstarts it to take our curriculum review. We start reviewing that curriculum to see if it meets those new standards that came out, and then we update our curriculum guide. And so it's just this continual cycle that we should have going and keep it going. Any other questions? Brandon?
One of the things that was mentioned was that this program allows y'all to adapt the material to the community and what y'all feel is appropriate to teach. Do they adapt, does ARC adapt that, or will there be additional expenses for like additional books that will need to be purchased to go along with
Sure.
that?
There is one unit we will have to, the book that we took out. So they have backups for a lot of the different thematic units. So if a school doesn't like that book, they have another book that meets the same and goes in that structure. Okay? So with this book that we chose not to go with, they didn't have one for that. So we're gonna have to find another book for that. That's like $400 or $500 to get. That's a good question. But going forward in the future, yes. So
I was gonna say, to go along with that, like, we very, very well might have a book already that will fit in this.
But that answers my question too, because it gives us an idea of what's that additional cost if we do that cost. So,
Right.
thank you.
And in the future, we might buy new sets of books too that fit that genre, that fit that structure too. So, which is, I like that aspect to it, because we're putting real novels in the hands of kids.
And the lessons are not constructed so that it's focused necessarily on the story or the title, but just the general theme, subject matter, and then using that book to gain background knowledge so you can effectively write about that topic.
I had a question, but you guys have. Great presentation.
Anything else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions from the public? Thanks again. Trustees, is there a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion. I move to adopt the purchase of the curricular resources presented to support our efforts in improving reading, writing, and literacy skills in the district.
Stephanie, is there a second?
Second.
Jennifer, second. All in favor of purchasing the curriculum and switching to the curriculum as outlined through the presentation? Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous, 6-0.
We're very excited.
I'm gonna ask everyone's approval for just a super brief thing while I speak. I'm gonna speak to Tony on the phone here. I'm gonna do it out here in public as part of the meeting and just see what so Tony, you probably heard that. If you want to move on, we're gonna go through some insurance things that are in front of us. I don't think we have that information. We're sure happy to post it on that. You can stay or you want to go, yeah. Okay, all right. Appreciate you being here for this. Absolutely, put you back on. Go ahead, Tony. Everybody's here now.
I just thank you, everybody, for tolerating my absence. I apologize, just like was busy. So thank you again, and everybody have a good day.
Thanks, Tony. All right. Let's let the minutes show that Tony left the meeting at 4:38, and we are still in possession of quorum. Meeting. Okay, all right, our next item on the action item on tonight's agenda is related to employee health insurance benefits and plans. We're currently with Must, and we have new rates from Must, and the district office has requested information from JPT, and they have provided those as well, and so Superintendent Dennis, you enlighten us.
Yeah, so the insurance committee has been evaluating insurance rates, renewal rates from Must. Were presented with originally at a 9.5% increase, and are now at an 8.5% increase. We decided to look at a competitor, JPT, who evaluated our previous rates from this year and came back with a proposal that is a 4.5% increase over our rates. So both companies show an increase over our current insurance rates. The major difference between the two providers is the size of the provider. So Must uses the provider network Blue Cross Blue Shield, and JPT uses a network called First Choice. Many of the folks on the insurance committee and others examined those provider lists and made some decisions which are reflected in a survey that I passed out. So you can see there are 61 responses. This is both secretary, para, classified staff, and certified staff. So it seems as though the will of our employees is to remain with Must as the provider. And I think that's largely due to the network and the providers that are available to our staff. So questions, comments? Trustee Gunterman was on the committee. I know Vicki Motley is here. So if there's any input, things that I didn't cover. Insurance is a big animal. It's and it's not getting cheaper anywhere. We do have in the future the possibility of the new state trust, which rates, I'm told from their administrator, will come out and be presented to districts. Excuse me, in October, with decisions being required sometime in November. So we'll see what that process brings. So, but yeah, benefits is a tough thing, and they don't seem to get any less costly.
I have one question, mainly because this is a new aspect of the work for me. Does Must not offer a tiered rated?
They do. Our district is one of a handful that has composite rates. And JPT, the reason that we chose JPT is because they are the only other provider that will do composite rates. If we were to leave Must or go to other providers that are different than these two, they would require us to move to a tiered rate system. We were exploring that at the beginning of the year and put some information out to staff, wondering about the motivation to transition to tiered rates. And it did come back with some, with staying with composite rates. I do feel like in the future, it will be critical to explore tiered rates as we move forward. I think that is but that will be a transition. If the district chooses to make a transition like that, there's going to need to be a year-long discussion about what that looks like, because it's just too much at the end of the line to be making a drastic change like that at this point, in my opinion.
And I asked that because, I have a daughter that's a paraprofessional, and if these composite rates, it's almost not worth her even carrying insurance. Like she won't have a paycheck when she won't have much of a paycheck when it happens, and so she can't be an isolated incident in our district, and so I worry about those who don't have a family who are paying this composite rate, and so I would like for us to explore that tiered.
I think I'll circle back to what Dave said and mention that was fully explored at the beginning of the year through a survey that was very eye-opening that all staff, it was a higher percentage participation in this one, I believe, that came back with across all employee groups were 2/3.
Yeah.
2/3 in favor of composite rate, including those employee groups who are in a salary position where most of the composite rate. Or it was.
No, it's definitely on our minds for sure.
Yeah.
Were those results shared in the board, not just with it?
Yeah, we shared that in the insurance committee.
Okay.
Yep.
Again, part of this is
Yep.
the learning process. Of what's going on. That's important. Appreciate it.
I think kind of the flip side to what you're talking about too, is that for people carrying families, when you switch from composite to tiered, the family cost goes significantly up, and I think that's why in the insurance committee, we discussed a lot, how to make that switch and how to slowly make that switch, and how if we start talking now about that potential and how it's gonna look and how it's gonna work, because our options as far as composite rates are limited. And that there's so many unknowns.
Yeah, and there's definitely a balancing act there, which is because the composite rates make that across the board. Yeah, I get it. Thank you for explaining. Thank you.
Other questions from the public? Comments?
I just know that after the last committee meeting, which we had on Monday, Glenda and I talked at Monday night, and we said, we need this to go out to the entire staff and get their vote, because, typically you would think, let's go with the cheapest rate. And we gave them all the information so that they could make their vote on what would work best for them. And I was surprised, but I also was kind of wishy-washy, because some of my doctors were in the First Choice Network, some were not. So then it becomes a balance. Does what I'm gonna have to pay for that doctor outweigh, the other? So,
There's no easy answer.
there's no easy answer, and we didn't want to make that for everybody. We wanted everybody to voice their opinion, so.
Yeah, this survey was helpful because you probably noticed in the narrative, when I wrote the narrative, I didn't really make a recommendation. But knowing that there was going to be a formulated opinion from insurance committee folks that would drive what I would report to you. But now seeing the survey results, it's clear to me that my recommendation to you would be that we stay with Must.
Is there a motion?
I would be happy to make a motion. I move to approve Must as the employee health insurance provider for the Stevensville School District.
Moved by Stephanie, seconded by Fran. And all those in favor of using Must as the approved insurance provider for the school district, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say sign. Motion carries. Right. Review that bit of a time, but let's quickly look at item C on our business action items. Item C and D are tied together, and item C is strictly a technicality that we need to take care of. There was a simple misprint on the hiring at the last meeting of a custodial staff member that was misprinted as a 0.5 hire, which is a 1.0.
It's a one,
full-time
yeah,
hire.
yeah.
And so we officially hired Deanna Wall as 0.5. That's correct, Dave, yes.
Mhm.
And then, but that is incorrect. We want to rehire for the coming year as a 1.0. This requires, or this mistake requires that we rescind our previous motion specifically for that employee, and then we go ahead and reconsider that to follow. So I don't see you're tied together. So that being said, are there any, I'll ask if there's any questions about that technical. Is there a motion to rescind the 0.5 hiring of Deanna Wall on the student staff? based on the last meeting.
So moved.
Jennifer?
Second.
Stephanie with the second. All those in favor of rescinding the motion that, that stated that we hired Deanna Wall at 0.5 full-time equivalent, that was passed at our last meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion has been rescinded. The floor is now open for a main motion related to the hiring of Deanna Wall. And can I,
I'll beg your favor to go ahead and we'll state it all out in the record. We'll the hire.
yeah, move to hire Deanna Wall as a full-time position. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second from Jennifer.
No,
Motion
it's
made-
from Fran.
Motion made by Dan. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to out-of-district enrollment, which is strictly elementary. I believe this is a meeting. And so we do have an elementary quorum present of 4 trustees. And so our elementary board is a 7-person board, and there are 4 elementary board members present tonight, constituting a majority and therefore. With, as we typically do, look through the packet there at those students. I see some are returning and then are some new. Is that how we kind of divide it out?
Yeah, so they're if they're returning, it's indicated on the form.
Is that true? The separate one is a student coming this year?
Yes, yes.
All right. And then returning is written on.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
There's an 8th grader, the last 4 numbers is 6357
Mhm.
with a 29% accuracy rate. Do we have more information as to
I'll
why?
have to look that up really quick, Fran, yeah.
I'm just wondering if we have information as to why that absentee rate is the way it is and if that's been addressed.
Yes, let me look up that too. Oh, yes. So this student has a medical condition that he has to miss school for appointments and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions?
Do you want separate motions for the 2 school years or all together?
I'm fine with all together unless there's some.
I think altogether is fine as well.
I move to accept the administrative recommendations for enrollment of the non-resident elementary students as presented.
There's a second. Made motion by Stephanie, seconded by Fran. Dan, how do you vote? Fran?
Aye.
I vote aye. Stephanie?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. That brings us to the end of our meeting. So other items from the administration, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Fran?
Second.
Jennifer, thank you. All those in favor of adjourning tonight's special meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Let's pass our,